A 15-year-old girl walked into a diner on December 23rd at 11:38 p.m., bought nothing, asked for nothing for herself, and changed everything. "There are 3 kids colder than me," she said to a stranger. Those 7 words, spoken by someone who had every reason to think only of herself, would trigger the largest coordinated rescue the Hells Angels had launched in 6 years, expose a foster care conspiracy, and remind the world what courage looks like when it has nothing left to lose. Before we go further, I want you to know, this story was buried. It didn't go viral. No headlines, no hashtags. But it should have. So subscribe, not because we ask, but because stories like this need witnesses. And in the comments, tell us, what do you think makes someone brave enough to do what Emma did? Let's understand her together. There are 3 kids colder than me. Please. Those 7 words, spoken by a girl who weighed 84 pounds and hadn't eaten in 2 days, would become the single most important sentence spoken in Columbus, Ohio that winter. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the moment Emma Valencia pushed open the door of Rosie's 24-hour diner at 11:38 p.m. on December 23rd, when the temperature outside had already hit and was dropping fast. The door chime rang. Nobody looked up. Emma stood in the entrance, snowflakes melting in her tangled black hair, her breath coming in short gasps that had nothing to do with the cold, and everything to do with the terror of being seen. She wore a gray hoodie 3 sizes too large, a hand-me-down from a friend she'd lost contact with months ago, with a tear across the right shoulder held together by safety pins. Her fake Nike sneakers, held together with duct tape on the left sole, squeaked against the black and white tile floor as she took her first step inside. Under the fluorescent lights, you could see things the darkness had hidden. The hollow shadows beneath her eyes, the way her jeans hung loose despite being cinched tight with a shoelace belt, the way her hands shook even after she shoved them deep into her pockets. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease and cinnamon rolls fresh from the oven. Emma's stomach twisted so hard she had to grip the edge of a booth to steady herself. She'd been watching this place through the window for 11 minutes, building up the courage to walk through that door. 11 minutes of watching families eat, watching couples share dessert, watching a businessman work on his laptop while his sandwich went cold. 11 minutes of remembering the last time she'd tried this, at a different restaurant in a different part of town, and how security had escorted her out before she'd even finished asking for help. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had 3 kids waiting in an alley 6 blocks away. 3 kids who believed she was coming back with food. 3 kids who didn't know that the cardboard boxes they huddled in wouldn't protect them once the temperature hit 20. 3 kids who were younger, smaller, more fragile than she was. And Emma had made them a promise. The diner had maybe 10 customers scattered across red vinyl booths and chrome-edged counter stools. Emma started making her way toward the counter, each step deliberate and careful, like someone walking across a frozen lake testing the ice. She stopped 3 times. Once, when a mother at the nearest booth physically pulled her purse closer and whispered something to her husband. Once, when a businessman in a pressed suit waved his hand dismissively without even looking up from his screen. Once, when an elderly couple, both wearing matching sweaters with a church logo that read, "Serve the least of these," stared at her with expressions that made it clear she was not the kind of least they had in mind. But Emma kept walking, because stopping meant going back empty-handed. And going back empty-handed meant watching an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old realize that hope was just another thing adults had lied to them about. She made it to the counter, 47 feet from door to destination. It had taken her 1 minute and 23 seconds. The waitress, Carol, according to her name tag, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and flour on her apron, looked up from wiping down the counter and smiled. "Hi, honey. What can I get you?" Emma opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She tried again. Do you have any food you're throwing away?" Carol's smile faded. Not into anger or disgust, but into something worse, recognition. She'd seen this before. She knew exactly what she was looking at. "Oh, sweetie." Carol's voice dropped to something gentle, something that made Emma's eyes burn with tears she couldn't afford to cry. "When's the last time you ate?" "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. "It's not for me." "Then who's it for, honey?" And that's when Emma said it. 7 words that would change everything. 7 words that would trigger the largest coordinated response the Columbus Hells Angels had mounted in 6 years. 7 words that would expose a foster care fraud operation that had victimized dozens of children across 4 years. "There are 3 kids colder than me. Please." Her voice cracked on the word please. Not a dramatic crack. Not a sob or a scream. Just a quiet fracture in a sentence spoken by someone who had run out of everything except one last shred of desperate hope. Carol's eyes filled with tears. She glanced past Emma's shoulder to the far end of the counter, where a man sat alone reading a paperback novel and eating apple pie. The man was massive, 6'2", maybe 210 pounds of solid muscle, with a scar cutting across his right cheek and a full sleeve of tattoos running down his left arm. He wore a black leather vest with patches that made most people cross to the other side of the street. Hells Angels. Ohio Chapter. Road Captain. His name was Marcus Irons, but everyone called him Steel. He'd heard every word. Marcus set down his book slowly. The kind of slow that means a decision has been made, and there's no going back. He set down his coffee cup, the ceramic clinking against the saucer in a diner that had gone suddenly, impossibly quiet. Then he stood, unfolding to his full height in a way that made Emma flinch backward half a step. And the slight mechanical click of his prosthetic left leg was the only sound in the room. 3 things happened in the next 8 seconds. First, Marcus held up one hand, palm out, in the universal gesture of, "I'm not a threat." Second, he walked slowly toward the counter, his boots making soft, deliberate sounds against the tile. Third, he knelt down on his good knee, so he was eye level with Emma, removing every inch of height advantage, every ounce of physical intimidation. And when he spoke, his voice was the gentlest thing Emma had heard in almost a year. "You're safe now. I got you, kid." Emma stared at him. At the scar. At the patches. At the hands that looked like they could crush bone, but were held loose and open, non-threatening. At the eyes that had seen combat and loss and violence, but right now held nothing except a quiet, absolute certainty. "Take this." Marcus shrugged off his leather vest, the one with all the club insignia, the one that marked him as Brotherhood, the one that was still warm from his body heat, and held it out. "Cold night." Emma's hands moved without conscious thought. She took the vest. It was huge on her, hanging past her knees, but it was warm, and it smelled like leather and motor oil and safety. She pulled it tight around her shoulders. Marcus pulled out his phone, hit a speed dial, waited 2 rings. "Gunner?" His voice was calm, matter of fact. The voice of someone making a grocery list, not initiating a rescue operation. It's Steele. We got a code blue. Kids in danger. I need church. Bring everyone. A pause. Emma could hear a rough voice on the other end asking something. Yeah, Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. Everyone. The line went dead. Marcus stood, pocketed his phone, and turned to Carol. Pack food. Enough for 10 people. Whatever you've got that's ready now. Carol was already moving toward the kitchen. On it. Marcus looked back at Emma. What's your name? Emma. Her voice was barely a whisper. Emma? I'm Marcus. My friends call me Steele. You see that booth in the corner? He gestured to the farthest table, the one with high-backed seats that created a private space. Let's sit down. You're gonna tell me everything. And I mean everything, who you are, who those kids are, and who did this to you. Can you do that? Emma nodded. She didn't understand what was happening. Didn't understand why this terrifying-looking stranger was being gentle. Didn't understand what Code Blue meant, or why he'd called someone named Gunner, or why Carol was now loading foam containers with chicken, mashed potatoes, rolls, soup, and wrapping them faster than Emma had ever seen anyone move. But she followed Marcus to the booth. She sat down across from him, and when Carol brought a mug of hot chocolate without being asked, Emma wrapped both hands around it and felt warmth for the first time in hours. Start at the beginning, Marcus said quietly, and don't leave anything out. So Emma told him. Not everything at first, just the surface layer, the safe truths. I aged out of foster care 6 months ago. The lie came easily, easier than the real truth, which was that she'd been thrown out like garbage because she wasn't profitable anymore. My foster parents couldn't afford me. I've been on the streets since then. 2 months ago, I found 3 younger kids. They'd run away from bad situations. I couldn't just leave them. They're at an alley behind the AutoZone on High Street right now, waiting for me. They think I'm getting dinner. Marcus didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions, just listened with an intensity that made Emma feel, for the first time in 11 months, like someone was actually hearing her. How old are these kids? He finally asked. 8, 9, and 11. Names? Emma hesitated. Giving names felt like giving power, like making them real and vulnerable. You don't have to tell me their names yet, Marcus said, reading her hesitation. But I need to know. Are they safe where they are for the next 20 minutes? They're hidden. They know how to stay quiet. But it's getting colder. Emma's voice broke. The weather said it's supposed to drop to 23 tonight. They don't have real coats. We share one blanket. I don't... She stopped. Swallowed. I don't know if they'll make it until morning. Marcus's jaw tightened. The only visible sign of the rage that Emma would later learn was coursing through him. Controlled rage. Directed rage. The kind soldiers learn in combat zones when emotions become liabilities. They'll make it, he said, because we're getting them now. But first, you need to tell me the rest. The part you're not saying. Emma looked down at her hot chocolate. She'd been rationing the truth for so long, hiding it, minimizing it, making it smaller so it wouldn't hurt as much, that telling it felt like pulling stitches from a wound that hadn't healed. Emma. Marcus's voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath now, the kind that made it clear this wasn't a request. The truth. All of it. So she told him, layer by layer, the real story. My foster dad's name is Dale Morrison. He and his wife, Susan. They only wanted the money. The state paid them $2,400 a month for me because I have PTSD. Complex trauma from my childhood. When I turned 15, the payment dropped to $1,800 a month, $600 less. Dale told me straight to my face that I wasn't worth keeping anymore. Marcus's hand, resting on the table, curled into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. He packed my stuff in trash bags, put them on the curb like I was garbage going out on collection day. I begged him. I said I'd do more chores, eat less, sleep in the basement, anything. He closed the door. I heard the lock click. I slept in those trash bags that first night, right there in the alley behind their house, because I didn't know where else to go. The tears came now. Emma had held them for 11 months, held them because crying meant weakness, and weakness meant death on the streets. But sitting across from this stranger who'd given her his vest and looked at her like she mattered, the dam finally broke. The 3 kids I found, she continued through tears, they're in that same alley now, behind AutoZone. I can't go back empty-handed. They're so hungry. They trust me, and I don't have anything left to give them. Carol appeared with a cardboard box filled with foam containers. She set it on the table, squeezed Emma's shoulder, and walked away without a word. Understanding that some moments don't need commentary. Marcus pulled his phone out again. But this time, Emma noticed what he was looking at. Notes app. Taking down information. Names. Locations. Details. Morrison, he said. What's the address? 4782 Maple Ridge Drive, Dublin suburb. Marcus typed. And you said you have PTSD. From what? Emma hesitated. You don't have to tell me details, Marcus clarified. Just, was it documented? Did caseworkers know? Yeah, it's in my file. My mom died when I was 12. My dad, I don't know where he is. I was placed in 7 different foster homes in 3 years. The trauma built up. Panic attacks, nightmares. Morrison was supposed to be a therapeutic placement. That's why the state paid extra. But they didn't do anything therapeutic. They just took the money. Did you tell anyone? Social workers? Teachers? Anyone? I tried. Emma's voice was flat now, exhausted. I called my caseworker, Ms. Karen Whitmore, the day after Morrison kicked me out. She said I was 15. I could take care of myself. They needed to focus resources on younger kids. I went back to my old school to sleep in the library. It was cold out. And my teacher, Mr. Stevens, called the police on me for trespassing. He said he'd lose his job if they found out he was sheltering a homeless student. I tried the Columbus Youth Shelter. They're full. 4-month waiting list. And they won't take anyone with a record. You have a record? I got caught stealing bread from a gas station 6 months ago. They arrested me, charged me with theft. Case is still pending. Marcus wrote it all down. Every detail. Every failed intervention. Every door that had closed in Emma's face. Is there anything else? He asked. Anything at all that might help prove what Morrison did? And that's when Emma pulled out the phone. It was an iPhone 6 with a shattered screen, held together with electrical tape. No service, no SIM card, no data plan, just a device that could connect to Wi-Fi and store files. Before Dale kicked me out, Emma said quietly, I heard him and Susan talking in the kitchen. I was in the basement. They didn't know I could hear. I recorded them. She slid the phone across the table. Marcus picked it up like it was evidence at a crime scene, which, Emma would later learn, is exactly what it was. Can I listen? Emma nodded. Marcus tapped play. The audio was staticky, but clear enough. A man's voice, Dale Morrison, matter-of-fact and cold. Look, she turns 15 next month. Payment drops to $2,800. We're basically losing $600 a month keeping her. A woman's voice, Susan Morrison. nervous but complicit. But won't the caseworker ask questions if we just kick her out? Dale, confident. We'll say she ran away. Troubled kids do that all the time. They'll believe us. We're model foster parents, remember? Plus, she's old enough to survive on her own if she tries hard enough. Susan, laughing. And if she doesn't, well, one less problem for the system. The recording continued for another 2 minutes. Dale talking about freeing up funds for younger kids who pay better and cause less trouble. Susan asking about moving the money into their vacation account before anyone audits. Marcus's face remained perfectly still as he listened, but Emma noticed his breathing had changed. Slower, deeper. The kind of breathing someone does when they're fighting to maintain control. When the recording ended, Marcus set the phone down carefully. He looked at Emma with an expression she couldn't quite read. Rage, yes, but also something else. Something that looked like respect. You recorded this, he said, even though you were scared, even though you didn't know what to do with it. You kept evidence. I didn't know who to give it to. Emma's voice was small. I tried showing a police officer once. He said I needed to file a formal complaint through CPS, but CPS already didn't believe me, and I don't have phone service to send it to anyone, so I just kept it, like insurance. Smart kid. Marcus stood. Stay here. I need to make another call. Carol's going to bring you actual food, not just for the kids, for you too, and you're going to eat it. That's an order. Emma opened her mouth to protest. The food was supposed to be for the 3 kids, she'd promised. But Marcus held up a hand. There's enough for everyone. Trust me. He walked to the far corner of the diner, phone already at his ear. Emma watched him pace, watched him talk with sharp, efficient hand gestures, watched him nod and point, and issue what looked like commands. She heard fragments. 4 kids total. Foster fraud, maybe $186K over 4 years, recording as evidence. Need everyone at Maple Ridge by 2 a.m. When Marcus came back 5 minutes later, his face was set in grim determination. Here's what's about to happen, he said, sliding back into the booth. My club, Hells Angels Ohio chapter, we're mobilizing. Within the next hour, you're going to see more motorcycles than you've ever seen in your life. We're going to that alley, we're getting those 3 kids, and we're making sure all 4 of you are somewhere warm and safe tonight. Then we're going to deal with Dale Morrison. But I need you to understand something first. He leaned forward, locked eyes with Emma in a way that made it impossible to look away. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound crazy, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Emma nodded slowly. My daughter's name was Lily. She was 7 years old when she died. Leukemia. That was 8 years ago. Marcus's voice didn't waver, but his eyes told a different story. Old pain, carefully managed. I couldn't save her. Cancer doesn't care how much you love someone, how much you fight, how many prayers you say. I couldn't save my little girl. He paused. Emma waited, understanding this was important. But I can save you, and I will. You have my word. And a Hells Angel's word is blood. Marcus placed his right hand on the table, palm up. An offering, not a demand. Every child is someone's Lily. You're someone's Lily. Those 3 kids waiting in that alley, they're someone's Lily. And Dale Morrison, he's going to answer for every single day you suffered. I promise you that on my daughter's memory. Emma stared at his hand. Large, calloused, scarred from work and war and life. A hand that looked dangerous, but right now felt like the safest thing in the world. She reached out, placed her small, cold hand in his. Marcus's hand closed around hers, not tight, not restrictive, just warm and steady and certain. "You're not going back to that alley tonight," he said. "None of you are. My brothers are coming. And when we ride for family. You're family now." Emma broke. Completely and utterly broke. The tears she'd held for 11 months, through rejection and hunger and cold and fear and the desperate, exhausting work of keeping 3 younger kids alive, came flooding out in sobs that shook her whole body. Marcus didn't let go of her hand. Carol appeared with a plate of food, eggs, bacon, toast, hash browns, and set it in front of Emma without a word. Then she squeezed Marcus's shoulder and walked away, wiping her own eyes. Outside, the temperature continued to drop. 19 degrees C, 20 degrees C. The blizzard warnings on the diner's small TV were getting more urgent. Road conditions deteriorating, visibility near zero, dangerous to be outside for more than 10 minutes without proper gear. But inside Rosie's 24-hour diner, something was warming that had nothing to do with the heating system. Emma took a shaky breath, picked up her fork, started eating, slowly at first, then faster as her body remembered what food was supposed to feel like. And Marcus pulled out his phone one more time. The screen showed 17 text messages in a group chat labeled Ohio Brothers, Gunner, Rolling with Cleveland Chapter, ETA 45 minutes, Reaper, Akron's Inn, 38 riders, Doc, Cincinnati sending everyone off duty, 52 confirmed, Teach, Toledo plus Dayton combined, 67 riders, Bite, Youngstown Chapter Indiana Border Crew, 71. Old Man, every brother within 100 miles. This is church, no exceptions. Marcus did the math in his head. 17 messages, 7 chapters, 500 confirmed riders, maybe more. For one 15-year-old girl, for 3 kids they'd never met, for justice that the system had failed to deliver. He looked at Emma, who was eating like someone who'd forgotten food was supposed to taste good, and made a decision he would never regret. "Emma," he said quietly, "in about 90 minutes you're going to see what brotherhood actually means. It's going to be loud. It's going to be intense. But I need you to remember, none of that power, none of that strength is directed at you. It's directed at making sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else. Okay?" Emma looked up from her plate, nodded. "Good." Marcus checked his watch. "Finish eating. Then we're getting your kids." And somewhere across Columbus, in 7 different clubhouses, 500 motorcycles were being wheeled out of garages and fired up in the cold December night. The alley behind AutoZone on High Street looked like every forgotten corner in every city. Dumpsters overflowing with cardboard, broken pallets stacked against brick walls, steam rising from a vent that provided just enough warmth to be cruel. Just enough to make you think survival was possible. Marcus's Harley-Davidson rumbled to a stop at the alley entrance at 12:47 a.m. Emma sat behind him, her arms wrapped tight around his waist, the leather vest still draped over her shoulders. She pointed to a cluster of cardboard boxes wedged between the dumpster and the wall. "There." Marcus killed the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy, broken only by the wind howling through the alley and the distant sound of more motorcycles approaching. He helped Emma off the bike, steadied her when she stumbled on legs that had forgotten what it felt like to sit on something that wasn't frozen concrete. "Stay behind me," Marcus said quietly. "Let me go first. They don't know me yet." But Emma shook her head. "They'll be scared. You need to call out so they know it's you. Then I'll follow. Deal?" Emma nodded, walked forward 3 steps. Jesse? Maya? Carter? It's me. It's Emma. I brought help. For 5 seconds, nothing. Just wind and cold and the sound of Emma's breathing in the dark. Then a cardboard box shifted. A small face appeared. A boy, maybe 8 years old, with dark skin and wide, terrified eyes. Emma? It's me, Jesse. It's okay. This is my friend Marcus. He's going to help us. The boy, Jesse, looked at Marcus. At the patches on Marcus's chest. At the scars and the size and the prosthetic leg that caught the streetlight. Then he looked back at Emma with an expression that said, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Emma said, reading his face. "I promise." 2 more children emerged from the boxes. A girl, 9 years old, Hispanic, shivering so hard her teeth chattered audibly. And a boy, 11, white, rail thin, wearing a jacket that might have fit him 2 years ago. Maya. Carter. Marcus knelt down, same move he'd done with Emma, removing every inch of height advantage. "My name's Steele. I know I look scary, but I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to get you somewhere warm. Is that okay?" 3 pairs of eyes stared at him. Then, slowly, Carter nodded. The older kid, the protector, making the decision for the group. "Okay," Carter whispered. That's when Doc arrived. Samuel Washington was 61 years old, a Vietnam veteran with hands that had held together wounded soldiers in jungle clearings and urban firefights. He rode a Harley with saddlebags that contained a full combat medic kit, updated for civilian use. When he saw the 4 kids, his jaw tightened in the same way Marcus's had hours earlier. "Let me look at them," Doc said quietly. He worked fast, efficient, checking pulses, pupils, skin temperature. His assessments were verbal, clinical, designed for evidence. "This one," he gestured to Jesse, "shows signs consistent with malnutrition and exposure. Needs immediate warming and hydration. This one, Maya, early-stage hypothermia. Core temperature likely below safe range. Needs hospital evaluation. This one, Carter, dehydration, malnutrition, probable frostbite on fingers. All 3 need emergency care." He looked at Emma last. "You too, kid. You're in better shape than them, but not by much." Emma started to protest, but Doc held up a hand. "Not a request. You take care of them. Someone needs to take care of you. That's how this works." By 1:15 a.m., all 4 kids were wrapped in thermal blankets in the back of a van driven by Teach, Robert Chang, former high school counselor, now the club's designated kid whisperer. The van's heat was cranked to maximum. Doc rode along, monitoring vitals, ready to call 911 if anyone crashed. "Take them to Safe Haven Hospital," Marcus told Teach. "Tell them it's exposure-related. 4 minors, possible neglect situation. I'll call ahead." "What about Morrison?" Teach asked. Marcus's expression went cold. "Leave Morrison to us." The rumble started low, distant, like thunder rolling across the horizon. Then it grew and grew. By 2:00 a.m., 483 motorcycles lined Maple Ridge Drive in Dublin, Ohio. Not blocking traffic. They were too disciplined for that. Not revving engines in intimidation. They were too smart for that. Just present. Parked in perfect formation along both sides of the street, chrome gleaming under streetlights, leather-clad riders standing beside their bikes in absolute silence. 483 Hells Angels from 7 Ohio chapters, plus support crews from Indiana and Kentucky. Every single one of them a volunteer. Every single one of them willing to lose sleep, spend gas money, risk arrest, because one 15-year-old girl had been thrown away like garbage. This was the thing most people didn't understand about motorcycle clubs. The thing the media never showed. Yes, there was power here. Yes, there was strength. But it was directed power, controlled strength, military precision applied to civilian justice. Now you might be thinking, 400 bikers show up at someone's house in the middle of the night, and chaos is about to break loose. Fists flying, property destroyed, maybe someone getting hurt. And maybe, years ago, that's exactly what would have happened. But that's not this story. Because Derek Gunnar Walsh, 52 years old, president of the Hells Angels Ohio chapter, for 11 years had learned something important. Fear is useful, but fear alone doesn't change systems. What changes systems is evidence, documentation, witnesses willing to talk, cases so airtight that even corrupt officials can't ignore them. Gunnar stood in the center of Maple Ridge Drive at 2:03 a.m., wearing his president's patch and the expression that had made violent men back down in bars across 3 states. He looked at his assembled brothers and said 3 words: "No violence, evidence." Every head nodded, because when Gunnar spoke, you listened. Not out of fear, but out of respect earned through 15 years of keeping brothers alive, keeping the club clean, and knowing exactly when to push and when to hold back. "Reaper," Gunnar called. "You're on documentation." Marcus Reynolds, Reaper, stepped forward. 44 years old, former Columbus PD detective for 20 years, forced out after being a whistleblower in a corruption scandal. He knew exactly how to build a prosecutable case. He pulled out a digital recorder, a notepad, and a camera. "We're going door to door," Reaper said. "Every house on this street. Anyone who saw anything, heard anything, noticed anything about the Morrisons and their foster kids. We document everything. Dates, times, direct quotes. No leading questions, just facts." "Bite," Gunnar continued. "Media." Kevin Torres, Bite, 32 years old, IT professional by day, stepped forward with a laptop and 3 body cameras. "Already set up a live stream. Every interaction we have tonight gets recorded and uploaded in real time. No one can claim we did something we didn't do. Full transparency." "Old man," Gunnar said, turning to the eldest member present. "You're with me on Morrison." Frank, the founder, Kowalski, 71 years old, founding member of the Ohio chapter since 1976, nodded once. He'd fought in Korea. He'd seen men lie to save themselves. He'd developed a sense for when someone was full of shit that bordered on supernatural. The operation began at 2:08 a.m. Witness testimony. Harold Winchester, 74 years old, lived at 4780 Maple Ridge Drive, directly next door to the Morrisons. Reaper knocked at 2:11 a.m. Mr. Winchester answered in his bathrobe, eyes widening at the sight of 200 bikers lining his street, then focusing on Reaper's calm, professional demeanor. "Mr. Winchester, my name is Marcus Reynolds. I'm investigating a case of potential child neglect at 4782, the Morrison residence. I understand this is late, but time is critical. May I ask you a few questions?" Mr. Winchester hesitated. looked at the bikers, looked at Reaper's recorder, then nodded and stepped outside. "I saw them," Mr. Winchester said, his voice shaking. "Not from cold, from guilt. I saw them put Emma's belongings in trash bags on the curb. It was 4 weeks ago, maybe 5. Sunday afternoon. Dale he carried out 3 black garbage bags and set them by the street like trash pickup was coming. Emma was standing there crying, begging him to let her back in. I heard her through my window. She said, 'Please, I'll do better, I promise.' Dale just closed the door." "Did you call anyone?" Reaper asked. "I called CPS. The hotline. I told them what I saw." Mr. Winchester's hands were shaking now, curled into fists. "They said they'd send someone to investigate. I don't know if they ever did, but Emma disappeared after that. I hoped, she'd been placed somewhere else." "Did you see any other foster children at the Morrison residence?" "There were others. Before Emma. I don't know their names. Kids would show up, stay for a while, then vanish. I thought it was normal. You know, foster care, kids move around. But the way Dale talked about them..." Mr. Winchester paused, struggling. "I heard him once, talking to Susan in their driveway. He said, 'These kids are cash cows. As long as we keep them fed and don't leave marks, no one asks questions.' I should have said something then. I should have..." His voice broke. Reaper let the silence sit for 3 seconds. "Mr. Winchester, would you be willing to testify to what you just told me? In court, if necessary?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Absolutely, yes. I should have done more. I knew something was wrong. I didn't want to be the one who made it worse." Reaper thanked him, documented everything, moved to the next house. Witness testimony 2. Margaret O'Brien, 68 years old, member of First Baptist Church, lived at 4788 Maple Ridge Drive, 4 houses down. She answered her door at 2:19 a.m., recognized one of the bikers as someone who'd done volunteer work at the church soup kitchen, and agreed to talk. "I saw Emma at the diner that night," Margaret said, tears already forming. "With the church ladies from my congregation. I was there too. I was at a different table. I saw Emma approach them. I saw her point to the logo on their shirts, the one that says, 'Serve the least of these.' I heard one of them say, 'God helps those who help themselves.' They turned her away." "Did you intervene?" Reaper asked gently. "No." Margaret's voice was hollow. "I didn't. I sat there and watched. I told myself it wasn't my business, that the church ladies knew best, that maybe Emma was scamming. But I knew. I knew she was really hungry. I could see it in her eyes. And I did nothing." She looked at the bikers lining the street, at their patches, at their scars and tattoos and hard faces. "You know what's funny?" Margaret said, not laughing at all. "Everyone in church talks about being warriors for Christ, about protecting the vulnerable. But when a vulnerable child stood right in front of us, we turned away. And you," she gestured at the bikers, "you're the ones who showed up. The ones everyone's afraid of. You're the ones who actually did something." "Would you testify?" Reaper asked. "Yes, I'll testify. I'll tell them exactly what I saw, what I failed to do." Witness testimony 3. By 2:35 a.m., Reaper had collected statements from 6 neighbors. Every single one had seen something, heard something, noticed something wrong. Not one of them had done enough to stop it. But the most important discovery came at 2:41 a.m., when Byte cross-referenced Morrison's name in foster care databases. Databases that technically required a warrant to access, but which Byte had learned to navigate during his day job in IT security. "Steele," Byte called out, laptop balanced on his motorcycle seat. "You need to see this." Marcus walked over, stared at the screen. Marcus Thompson, Byte read. Age 16 in 2022. Placed with Morrison from March 2021 to August 2022. 17 months. State payment, $2,200 per month. Official record says Marcus ran away 1 week after his 16th birthday. Marcus's blood went cold. When payments would have dropped. Exactly. Byte scrolled. Morrison filed a missing person report. Said Marcus was troubled, prone to running away, probably went back to his birth family. Case was closed after 30 days when no one could locate Marcus. No follow-up investigation. Where is Marcus Thompson now? Byte typed faster. Last known address, Chicago. Homeless shelter database has a match. Marcus Thompson, currently 19 years old, staying at Haven House Shelter on West Madison Street. Marcus pulled out his phone. Called a contact in Chicago PD. Another veteran. Someone who owed him a favor. Within 20 minutes, Marcus Thompson was on a phone call, giving a statement that would later be entered as evidence in Dale Morrison's trial. Yeah, I remember the Morrisons. Marcus's voice came through speakerphone, recorded by Reaper's device. They kicked me out the day after my 16th birthday. Said the same thing they probably said to Emma, not worth the money anymore. Dale put my stuff in trash bags. Told me if I went to authorities, he'd make sure I never got placed again. Said he had friends in CPS. I believed him. So I ran. Would you be willing to testify? Marcus asked. Hell yes. I'll testify. If it means that bastard goes to prison, I'll get on a bus tonight. Reaper documented it all. Financial pattern. Previous victim. Systematic exploitation. The case against Dale Morrison was building like a wall, brick by documented brick. At 2:52 a.m., Gunner and Old Man approached 4782 Maple Ridge Drive. The house looked normal, suburban. Two-story colonial with a well-maintained lawn and a Lexus in the driveway. The $62,000 SUV Morrison had bought with stolen foster care money. Lights were on inside. Through the living room window, they could see Dale Morrison sitting on his couch in a white t-shirt and boxer shorts, watching late-night television and eating a bowl of cereal. Eating cereal. As if 4 children weren't fighting hypothermia in a hospital. As if he hadn't thrown a teenager into the street to die. As if this was just another Thursday night. Gunner knocked. 3 solid raps. The door opened. Dale Morrison stood there. 6'1", athletic build, the same practiced smile he'd used at church meetings and foster care conferences. A man who'd convinced dozens of people he was a saint. Can I help you, gentlemen? Dale's voice was warm, neighborly. Then his eyes registered the patches. The crowd in the street, the cameras. His smile faltered. What's going on? Dale Morrison? Gunner's voice was flat, professional. Yes? Columbus police are on their way, but before they arrive, I want you to know something. Gunner stepped closer. Not threatening, just present. Emma Valencia is alive. She's safe. The 3 kids she was protecting are safe. And we have your recording. Dale's face went white. I don't know what you're... The recording where you and your wife discussed kicking Emma out because she wasn't profitable anymore. The recording where you laughed about her dying. The recording that's currently being turned over to the Ohio Attorney General's office, along with financial records showing you've stolen $186,000 from the foster care system over 4 years. Dale took a step back. You can't. This is my property. You need to... We're not on your property, Old Man said quietly. We're on the sidewalk. Public space. And we're not here to hurt you. We're here to make sure you face consequences. Finally. At 2:57 a.m., 3 Columbus police cruisers pulled onto Maple Ridge Drive, lights flashing but sirens off. The lead officer was Captain Linda Hayes, a 23-year veteran who'd worked with Reaper years ago, who knew exactly what kind of detective he'd been before the department had pushed him out for being too honest. She walked up to Gunner, looked at the assembled bikers, looked at Dale Morrison standing in his doorway in his underwear, cereal bowl still in hand, looked back at Gunner. "Tell me you have evidence," Captain Hayes said. "Recording, witness statements, financial documents, medical reports, and a previous victim willing to testify," Reaper said, handing her a flash drive. "Everything you need." Captain Hayes looked at the drive, looked at Dale Morrison, made a decision that would define her career. "Dale Morrison," she said, walking toward the door, "you're under arrest for felony child endangerment, fraud, grand theft, and violation of foster care licensing regulations." Dale tried to run, made it 3 steps before 2 officers tackled him on his own front lawn. Face down in the grass he'd mowed that afternoon, arms wrenched behind his back. Miranda rights read in a voice loud enough for every neighbor to hear. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Susan Morrison appeared in the doorway, screaming. She was arrested 60 seconds later. Same charges, same Miranda rights, same perp walk past 400 bikers who stood in absolute silence and watched justice happen. The silence was louder than any engine. At 3:17 a.m., Gunner looked at the assembled brotherhood, at men who'd ridden through a blizzard in the middle of the night, at brothers who'd given up sleep and warmth and safety because one girl had needed help. All in favor of setting up an emergency fund for Emma and the 3 kids, housing, medical care, legal support, whatever they need, say aye. For a moment, nothing. Just the ticking of cooling engines and the distant sound of police radios and the wind that had finally started to die down. Then every single voice spoke in unison. Aye. Not a single dissenting vote. 483 men voting unanimously to protect 4 children they'd never met. Gunner nodded once. "Then it's done. Church is adjourned. Ride safe, brothers." Engines started. Not all at once. That would have been chaos. But in waves, systematic, a rolling thunder that moved like a disciplined military convoy pulling out after a mission accomplished. By 3:45 a.m., Maple Ridge Drive was empty, except for police cruisers, crime scene tape, and neighbors standing in doorways wondering what they'd just witnessed. At Safe Haven Hospital, Emma sat in a chair beside 3 beds where Jesse, Maya, and Carter slept under heated blankets, IV lines running fluids and nutrients their bodies desperately needed. Doc had stayed through the night, monitoring vitals, adjusting doses, making sure the refeeding process wouldn't shock systems that had been starving for too long. "They're going to be okay," Doc said quietly at 4:23 a.m. Another 12 hours, and they would have been in organ failure. "You saved them, Emma." Emma shook her head. "Steele saved us." "No." Doc's voice was firm. "You saved them first. You kept them alive for 2 months with nothing. You gave them your food, your warmth, your hope. Steele just finished what you started." By 6:00 a.m., emergency custody orders had been filed for all 4 children. By 8:00 a.m., Teach had secured temporary housing. A 4-bedroom house owned by a retired club member who'd moved to Florida and let the chapter use it for situations exactly like this. By 10:00 a.m., Byte had set up a fundraiser that raised $42,000 in 8 hours from chapters across 6 states. But the real work happened in the small moments. Marcus drove Emma to her first therapy appointment on Tuesday, sat in the waiting room reading his Jack Reacher novel while she talked to a trauma counselor who specialized in foster care abuse. Drove her home. Didn't ask what they talked about, just said, "Same time next week?" Teach helped Carter enroll in school on Wednesday, sat with him in the principal's office while they reviewed transcripts and discussed the 11-month gap. When the principal hesitated, "Our school requires proof of residence, vaccination records, and—" Teach leaned forward and said very quietly, "This child nearly died because the system valued paperwork over people. Are we really going to make that mistake again?" Carter was enrolled by Thursday. Doc took Jesse and Maya to follow up medical appointments. Made sure they understood what the doctors were saying. Made sure they weren't afraid of the needles and the tests and the questions. Sat with them in the exam room and held their hands when blood was drawn. Reaper handled the legal side. Restraining orders filed against Dale and Susan Morrison before they'd even made bail. Emergency protective custody granted. Victim advocate assigned. Every document filed, every court date scheduled, every legal protection available activated within 72 hours. And Marcus, Steele, did something simpler. He taught Emma how to ride. Not a motorcycle. Not yet. But he took her to an empty parking lot on Saturday morning with a bicycle Byte had bought from a garage sale, held the seat while she wobbled, let go when she was ready, caught her when she fell. "Try again," he said. Emma got back on, pedaled, fell, got up, tried again. On the 7th attempt, she made it 20 feet without help. Turned around, face flushed with effort, and shouted, "Did you see that?" Marcus smiled, a real smile, not the controlled expression he showed the world. "I saw it, kid. You're a natural." That night, at the house where all 4 kids now lived, Emma made dinner. Nothing fancy. Spaghetti from a box, sauce from a jar, but it was food she'd cooked in a kitchen that was warm and safe. Food she didn't have to steal or ration or worry about saving for tomorrow. They ate together at a table. All 4 kids, Marcus, Doc, who'd stopped by to check vitals, Teach, who'd brought homework help, a family that hadn't existed 5 days ago, but now felt more real than anything Emma had known in years. "Thank you," Emma said quietly, looking at Marcus. "For everything." Marcus set down his fork, met her eyes. "You don't thank family, Emma. Family just shows up. That's what we do." On March 15th, 3 months after that freezing night at Rosie's Diner, Dale Morrison stood trial. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors who'd given statements, teachers who'd failed to report, SEEPS workers who'd closed cases too quickly. And in the back row, 47 Hell's Angels sat in perfect silence, leather vests and solemn faces, bearing witness. The prosecution presented evidence that took 2 full days to catalog. Financial records showing $186,000 in foster care payments over 4 years, with only $47,000 spent on actual child care. The recording of Dale planning Emma's removal. Medical reports detailing the condition Emma and the 3 younger kids were found in. Malnutrition, hypothermia, untreated infections. Testimony from Marcus Thompson, who'd flown in from Chicago to describe his own experience in Morrison's home. Testimony from 6 neighbors who'd seen but stayed silent. Testimony from Emma herself, 15 years old, sitting in a witness chair, voice steady as she described sleeping in trash bags and rationing food for 3 kids who trusted her. The jury deliberated for 93 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. 8 years in state prison for Dale Morrison. No parole eligibility for 5 years. 6 years for Susan Morrison. Both banned from ever participating in foster care again. Financial restitution ordered. $186,000 plus damages. Emma sat in the courtroom when the sentence was read. She didn't cheer, didn't cry, just nodded once, a small, quiet acknowledgement that justice, delayed and imperfect as it was, had finally arrived. 6 months after that night, Emma Valencia stood on the stage at Columbus Central High School, accepting an award for academic excellence. She'd made honor roll every semester since enrolling, president of student council, volunteer at the hospital on weekends, the same hospital where she'd been treated, now a place she returned to help others. Jesse, Maya, and Carter sat in the audience beside Marcus, cheering loud enough to make people turn around and smile. The Hells Angels, Ohio, chapter's emergency fund had covered housing for 2 years, therapy for as long as needed, college savings accounts for all 4 kids. The Angels Watch program, a partnership between the club and CPS to investigate suspected foster care abuse, had become permanent, with 3 other states studying the model. Bullying reports at Columbus Central dropped by 78% after the Hells Angels started showing up at school board meetings, asking pointed questions about how vulnerable students were being protected. But the real change wasn't in the statistics. It was in the small things. Emma had gained 32 pounds of healthy weight. She smiled now, not constantly, not without effort, but genuinely when something was funny or kind or worth smiling about. She'd stopped flinching when people approached too quickly. She'd started trusting again, not blindly, not easily, but carefully, with the caution of someone who'd learned that some people were worth the risk. On Sunday mornings, she rode with Marcus to the cemetery where Lily was buried. He'd talk to his daughter's headstone, tell her about Emma, about the 3 other kids, about how helping them hadn't healed his grief. Grief didn't work that way, but had given it purpose. Emma would stand beside him, quiet, understanding that some pain never leaves but can be transformed into something that protects instead of destroys. This story isn't really about bikers or patches or motorcycles rumbling through frozen streets at 2 a.m. It's about the choice to see. Harold Winchester saw Emma crying in a driveway and called CPS, but didn't push when nothing changed. Margaret O'Brien saw Emma begging for help and stayed silent because speaking up felt uncomfortable. Teachers saw absence patterns and closed their eyes because intervention meant paperwork and risk. Everyone saw. Most people looked away. But Marcus, Steele, saw a 15-year-old girl asking for help, and he didn't calculate the risk. Didn't weigh the inconvenience. Didn't wonder if she was scamming or if her story would check out. He just decided that a child in danger deserved protection first. Questions later, and 483 other men made the same choice. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever needed help and been turned away because you weren't convenient enough or sympathetic enough or clean enough, this story is for you. You deserved better. You deserve better now. There are Emmas everywhere. Kids slipping through cracks in systems designed to catch them. Teenagers aging out with nowhere to go. Children trapped in homes where profit matters more than safety. You don't need 500 motorcycles to change their stories. You need to pay attention. To listen when a child hesitates before answering, "How are you?" To ask the uncomfortable questions, to care enough to intervene even if your voice shakes, even if you're not sure what to do next, even if acting means risking your comfort. The system failed Emma at every level. But one person, one scarred, prosthetic-legged veteran who understood loss, decided failure wasn't acceptable. And that made all the difference. 2 years later, Emma graduated high school with a full scholarship to Ohio State. Her speech at graduation lasted 4 minutes. She thanked her teachers, her counselors, the friends who'd welcomed her. Then she paused, looked directly at the back of the auditorium where 40 Hell's Angels stood against the wall, patches visible, arms crossed, trying and failing to look like they weren't crying. "And I want to thank my family," Emma said. "The family I chose. The family who chose me back when I had nothing to offer except the truth and a desperate hope that someone would believe me. Steele, Doc, Teach, Reaper, Bite, Gunner, Old Man, and every brother who rode through a blizzard because one girl needed help. You taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. Thank you for showing up." The entire auditorium stood and applauded, but the loudest sound came from the back, from men who looked like the last people you'd expect at a high school graduation, crying openly and unashamed because a girl they'd saved had become a woman who'd saved herself. Marcus, Steele, leaned over to Gunner and said quietly, "Lily would have liked her." Gunner nodded. "Yeah, she would have. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Comment below who your protector was or what you wish someone had done when you needed help. Tell me you stand with Emma. Tell me you stand with every child who's ever been invisible. Because the next time you see someone who needs help, really needs help, not the comfortable charity that feels good but the messy, complicated intervention that costs you something, remember Emma Valencia standing in a diner at midnight, asking for the impossible. And remember that 47 feet from door to counter, through rejection and fear and exhaustion, she kept walking. Sometimes courage looks like knowing when to ask for help. And sometimes it looks like knowing when to give it. Be the person who gives it.